Welcome back to Askewed Reviews, and today we are doing another fan request, and it is for the 1994 drama The Shawshank Redemption. Here is your trivia question for today. What three actresses appear as posters on Andy's wall? The answer will be at the end of this video. We start the film off by meeting one of our main characters, Andy Dufresne, played by Tim Robbins. He has supposedly committed murder, killing his wife and his wife's lover, and now he's being sentenced to prison for life. At Shawshank Prison, we meet our other main character of Red, played by Morgan Freeman, who is apparently the kind of guy who can get you whatever you need when you're in the joint. As the film takes place over multiple years, we get to see what it's like to deal with corruption with both a warden and a corrections officer who are not that great, and also dealing with other prisoners and their daily lives. Stephen King originally wrote this as one of his shorter stories that appeared in a collection called Different Seasons. The original story was called Rita Hayworth and the Shawshank Redemption, and it appeared with other stories like Apt Pupil, which Andy Dufresne also appears in that story, and it received its own film. The Body, which actually received a film as well called Stand By Me, and The Breathing Method, which never received a film so far. Stephen King was actually such good friends with Frank Darabont that he actually sold the rights to do the film for only $5,000. However, though, he actually never cashed the check. He one day framed it and mailed it back to Frank Darabont with a little note that said, "In case you ever need bail money, love, Steve." Frank Darabont also says that he continually watched the movie Goodfellas for inspiration, specifically for voiceover narration and passage of time throughout a film. Before Frank Darabont decided to actually direct the movie himself, Rob Reiner was very close to being the director, and he was originally going to have Harrison Ford as Red and Tom Cruise playing Andy. There was actually quite a few potential actors for these roles. For the character of Red, it almost went to Clint Eastwood, Paul Newman, Gene Hackman, Robert Redford, Robert Duvall, or Sidney Poitier. There was also quite a few actors up for the role of Andy, including Jeff Bridges, Matthew Broderick, Nicolas Cage, Johnny Depp, and Charlie Sheen. Although the closest to actually get the role was Tom Hanks or Kevin Costner. Tom Hanks was offered the role, but he was already doing Forrest Gump, and Kevin Costner was already signed up to do Waterworld. Bob Gunton, who plays the character of Warden Norton, got the role mainly due to the fact that he's 6'2" and Tim Robbins is 6'5". They wanted to make it seem believable that when Tim Robbins puts on the suit at one point, that he would be able to fit into it. Now, Dennis Hopper was a possibility for the warden, and also so was James Cromwell. Now, he wasn't able to appear in that prison movie by Stephen King, but he does appear as a warden in another Stephen King prison movie, The Green Mile, which Tom Hanks also appears in, and William Sadler, who appears in this movie, appears in Green Mile, and appears in Stephen King's The Mist. Which also, by the way, all three of those movies named are not only Stephen King adaptations, they're also Frank Darabont movies. The character of Brooks was originally offered to both Jack Lemmon and Walter Matthau. However, they both had to turn it down because both of them were filming Grumpy Old Men. The character of Tommy Williams was originally written for Brad Pitt, but he unfortunately was doing Interview with a Vampire at the time. James Gandolfini was almost the character of Boggs. However, Mark Rolston, who got the actual character, when he walked into his audition, Frank Darabont actually said to him, "Oh my god, it's Drake from Aliens." The character of Fat Ass was almost played by Jon Favreau. John Horton, who plays the judge at the beginning of this film, also was in another Stephen King adaptation called Thinner. Clancy Brown also appears in Pet Sematary 2, which is not actually based off of one of Stephen King's books, but the original movie was based off of the original book. By the way, the mugshot you see of a young Red is actually Alfonso Freeman, who is Morgan Freeman's son. Tim Robbins actually tried to spend some time in solitary confinement so he could get an idea of what it was like for his character. Red's cell in the movie is number 237. They also use that number in The Shining at the Overlook Hotel for room 237 where the dead woman is. The rock wall which appears in the movie was actually created for the film. When Andy crawls through the pipes to get to freedom, the actual material in the pipes was a mixture of chocolate syrup, water, and sawdust. Apparently, even 2 decades after doing that sequence, it still smells like cocoa in those pipes. In 1966, which is supposedly when Andy breaks out of prison, is also the same year that the Miranda rights were created due to Miranda v. Arizona, which, when you see Captain Hadley getting arrested, the police officer is reading the Miranda rights off of a piece of paper because they hadn't been memorized yet. The scene where Red is playing baseball near the beginning of the movie actually took 9 hours to film. So the next day, when Morgan Freeman came back for filming, his left arm was actually in a sling. Tim Robbins had to get used to when Jake the Crow would squawk. He had to plan it just perfectly so that when he said his line, the crow would squawk back in response. Apparently, the only issue Stephen King had with the film is he felt the tunnel that Andy dug out was too circular and felt almost cartoonish. The Shawshank Redemption, in my opinion, is a masterpiece, and definitely in my top 10 movies of all time. I can rewatch this movie and still find enjoyment in watching it every single time. So I'm going to give this movie a 5 out of 5. As for the trivia question from the beginning of this episode, what three actresses appear as posters on Andy's wall? The first one is Rita Hayworth, which makes a lot of sense, as she is in the original title for the book. The second is Marilyn Monroe, and the third is Raquel Welch. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Askewed Reviews, and if there's a movie you'd like to see get a review, just mention it in the comments. And as always, like, comment, share, and subscribe.